Welcome to Just the Story. You know those mud flaps with the silver naked girls on them? You know, the really high-class accessories that anybody would want on their babe magnet. Let me tell you what they mean to me. When I was a DJ in California, we got lots of calls from girls. Some wanted requests, others just wanted to talk late into the night. So this one woman called me, and we talked for 5 nights in a row, and we decided maybe we should meet for lunch. The problem was that neither of us had a car, and she lived a good 30 miles away. My roommate, big-hearted as always, offered to let me borrow his car. I think he really wanted me to get a girlfriend and settle down. Well, I followed her directions. I arrived in her town. It was blisteringly hot. I followed her directions, and the road went from 2 lanes, then 1 lane each way, and finally an ancient asphalted road that seemed bitter about being slowly subsumed by the weeds that dotted its surface. I made the turn at the street sign that was bent over at an angle, and I didn't see any houses, just wheat fields. As I drove, the whole thing got a sort of Stephen King vibe about it, an occasional abandoned house that was probably home to cannibalistic blood farmers. Suddenly there was a house, and then another, and then there was nothing for a mile. And then finally, I got to the end of the road, a cul-de-sac, and there was a house on the right-hand side, and it was a mess. It was a clapboard house that had probably been painted white once, but the faded pigment was yellowing, and that made the house look like it was suffering from jaundice. There was no grass in the front yard because of the 3 abandoned cars sitting there. I expected to see pigs in the front yard, but instead there was a passel of militant-looking chickens. The house number she had given me matched the house I was in front of. No sooner as I stopped, but suddenly the front door flew open and a young woman streaked towards the car. She had the car door open in a jiffy and was in and seatbelted before I could say hello. She was pretty as I was handsome, and I wanted to continue the date despite where she lived. Sometimes we don't have choices where we live. I turned the car around at the dead end, and we headed out. We were both shy. We exchanged smiles. She grabbed my hand and said, "It's great to finally meet you." And I said, "Yeah, I'm glad to meet you too." But I wasn't prepared for what she did next. She put her hands over her mouth and she started screaming, and I looked around and I saw in front of us a car had emerged from the wheat field and had zoomed across our path, leaving a hail of straw following it. I swerved to avoid it, but there really never was a real threat about hitting it. Then the car disappeared into the adjacent wheat field, and suddenly it was as if nothing had happened. But we could see where the car had exited and entered the fields. That was our only proof that the whole thing wasn't a dream. She had her hands covering her eyes. I pulled back onto the road and slowly drove along. And then I saw in my rearview mirror, I saw the car come out of the field again. This time it was following us. It passed us on the left-hand side of the road, spitting rock and dirt as it went. 30 feet ahead of us, it swerved to block the road. I stopped a respectful distance away and began to slowly back up. She still had her hands covering her face. She was crying. "I can get past him when he follows us back," I said. I could see his car now. It was a well-tended wreck with huge tires and a light bar on the top. "No," she said. I'm sorry, this was a mistake. Take me home." "What? What's going on?" I asked. She said, "It's my ex-boyfriend. He's possessive." "We can get past him," I said. No. She shook her head. "He'll either run us off the road or make a scene wherever we go for lunch." I asked her if she was sure. She nodded yes. I drove her back to the house. We said our goodbyes, and she got out of the car and walked back to the front porch. It was the first time I'd ever seen true defeat in a person's walk. By this time, he had turned around, and he drove ahead of me, escorting me along the road. From time to time, he would hit his brakes really hard, daring me to hit his car, but I didn't take the bait. A couple times he gestured for me to pull over, but I wasn't about to leave the car to face him in an area where I could easily be disposed of. We communicated by casually flipping each other off till we reached the main road. Then he pulled off to let me get out, and he spun donuts on the cracked asphalt, I guess as a final show of dominance. I flipped him off with both my hands, and he straightened his car out and headed back down the road we had just come from. The last thing I saw were the silver naked women cutouts on his mudflaps. And that's just the story. Hi, I'm DM Fitzgerald. I'm the creator of Just the Story. If you enjoyed our program, please like and subscribe because we have a ton of more content coming your way.